the West Coast is now very active in film. The list of filmmakers in San Francisco alone is very impressive. Some of them are very young and have done very little work.
I wish their films were as impressive as the list of names.
Yeah. Among them, who do you think are the most promising?
I'd say there are any number of promising people around, but I can't say which one will come to anything.
I'm looking for the growing edge. Therefore, I'm only looking for promise. I'm only looking for a finger in the right direction, you know. I'm not asking where are the masterpieces, because if that were so, if I were looking for masterpieces, I'd know where to go.
It would be wonderful to have a few to point at, though. But I think the young boy in Berkeley, Bruce Bailey, is very talented, although his great visual sense, but his feeling for content is completely amorphous. He at least is not as crazy, and he's not as paranoid as most filmmakers. You can tell him what you think is the matter with his movies, and he'll think it over and talk to you about it. He doesn't just decide that you're a ghastly critic. I think if he ever can join up with someone who has a feeling for the literary forms, is going to do something. Mm-hmm. Then. And I mean the literary forms of film. I don't mean literary form. But I think probably you have to be a writer in other ways before you're a film writer, too. Or else, have an extraordinary feeling for words with the film medium. Most of the problem is the people who write for the film medium don't write. Brackage's dialogue, for instance, and narration for some of his new work is completely inadequate as literature for the film.
He seems to be aware of this.
That's good.
He told me so. I know which one you're referring to. And he says he is looking for sound, and he hasn't found anything that will go with his picture.
I think that's true.
And why is it that sound will not go with any of his pictures?
Well, for one thing, remember, they shoot silent because they can't afford to shoot with sound. Sound equipment is so difficult, expensive, and cumbersome that they would lose all the flexibility they have with the camera if they were trying to work with a sound camera. And this has been the great advantage of these people, if they were working with a silent camera that could be handheld and all the rest of it. And you work with tape-recorded sound or something to put with it. And then the studio post-synchronizing and all is expensive. They never have enough money really to play around and get what they want. And so they have tended to slight the verbal side of movies and to say it wasn't important, that films were a visual medium. And this is one of those matters of economy dictating aesthetics. It's a very fake aesthetic that comes out of it, because these people need sound so desperately. The boredom of looking at an evening of these films without decent sound it's awful. There are Kent Mackenzie works with better sound, fairly imaginative. He works in 35 millimeter, though not in 16. And I don't know how much more he'll be able to work because he hasn't gotten his money back on his last film yet.
What was the name of it?
The Exiles, which is a semi-documentary film. But he worked, he's a USC graduate, and he worked with a couple of other...
Indian film.
Yes, that's right. He worked with a couple of other USC boys. And it's not extremely imaginative. It's not great, but I think it's a film, say, that Robert Flaherty would pat him on the back for. Mm-hmm. It's a very honest film. Then there are an awful lot of people making films that might just as well be industrial documentaries, even though they're breaking their necks to do them, which is to say they will take a natural pattern or some process in nature and spend a couple of years working over it. And these are not the people I'm concerned about, because I don't think there's anything
We have
there.
a number of those in Los Angeles, and
Yes.
The Leaf was an example.
Yes, The Leaf. I was thinking of The Leaf. There are a good many of these.
Musicians are not making film, but poets are, and painters are. For instance, here in San Francisco, there's a Christopher McLean,
Yes.
who is a filmmaker, but he's a painter and a poet.
Yes, but have you
That's
seen his
interesting.
films?
No. I'm asking you, what do you think?
No.
On the other hand, there's a writer by the name of Sidney Peterson, who is making film.
Sidney hasn't made a film in many years.
Mm-hmm.
His films were in a more traditional European avant-garde surrealist
Well, let's go
tradition.
back a few years. Broughton made 5 films, I think.
Yeah.
And he is a poet of great gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what did what was the result of a poet making a film?
Oh, well, in Broughton's case, he achieved a poetic style and content to his films. I think he's one of the few people who has a kind of feeling for the medium so that he could work very inexpensively and still achieve a lyric sense with the images. Now, the soundtracks of his films are not so successful, as you know. There again, it's post-synchronized stuff.
Post-synchronized.
It's post-synchronized.
In what way are they not successful?
I don't say they're as unsuccessful as most, but they don't have the lilt, the quality that the images do. And this is largely because they are studio added. I mean, he reads his own poetry on the soundtrack. It's much better integrated than in most films because it is his own, and it does, but it lacks the elegance that it should have for this kind of, because his work is almost like court poetry, even in film. It's very, lovely, fragile. It doesn't try for any deep meanings, and that's a relief. Almost every young filmmaker I've seen the past few years has had a shot of the atom bomb and that mushroom cloud in his film. They are all so obsessed with seeing Jesus Christ. And it is a great relief to see a man who just tries to do something nicely and doesn't try to make it too big.
For instance, Jordan Belson?
Jordan Belson is a brilliant filmmaker, I think. The greatest abstract filmmaker in this country, and is much too little known. I think his film Allures is really extraordinary. Yeah, marvelous film. LSD, the one he made right afterward, has visual effects that would make most of the Hollywood big studio effects men, wince with pain. Because here's one man working in a little studio who can, God, what he can achieve, But he's a very rigid abstract filmmaker, and he has a very rigid approach to work and to what he wants to do with it. And his films have had very little prominence, so I don't think they've had anything like the effect on younger people they should have. But I see people who work in the same mode, who are his inferiors in every way, who are acclaimed. And here is the real master, and he's unknown. Then there is interesting work being done in a mixture of animation and other forms in Europe at the moment that very few people have attempted in this country. The Poles are doing extraordinary things. I think partly it's very interesting to see the sociological things working in films because they can't say anything directly on film. They've worked out a kind of fable style. And so they can suggest so many things, and it's quite extraordinary. Films like Two Men in the Wardrobe and Dome have all kinds of layers of suggestions and possibilities.
The film board in Canada and its animation films and the painting films and so on. So a few remarks on that, please.
Yes, well, here's another aspect of this whole sociological thing. Canada has no feature film production, so the best artists all work in shorts of one type or another, either animation or live action. And as propaganda was a very important thing for Canada, they set up the Canadian Film Board. These people became civil servants. So here we have a whole class of highly talented civil servants who are film artists, terribly frustrated because they can't make features because there's no feature film production. So they're stretching the boundaries of the documentary in new ways, so that new Canadian documentaries have more excitement and drama than most feature films in other countries. They're doing satirical films like the Paul Anka film Lonely Boy, which is a brilliant social satire. Another group up there has just made The Most, which is a satire on Hugh Hefner. And then, of course, Norman McLaren's influence on them has been extraordinary in other ways. And in animation, they are being influenced by young people in England. There's a kind of prof patch here. It's interesting because the English are, of course, influenced by that influx of the Hungarians who came into England a period ago, the Hollis and Batchelor group. It's a funny thing because the new work in animation all over the world is beginning to look alike. And this is very interesting, and it's also true of whether you want to call it the growing edge or whatever you want to call it. I saw a film made in Czechoslovakia a couple of weeks ago that looked exactly like a New York experimental film. You know, and it seemed so tiresome to me because I'd seen this sort of thing for years. And then a Czech I talked to said, well, that's the most exciting thing that we turned out in Czechoslovakia last year. It's animation particularly, though, I think has become the same all over. There are very interesting things going on in it, though, in this new mixture of animation with photographic techniques and other elements. Also, this new, the Vanderbeek technique. A young Canadian has made a film called Very Nice, which is almost indistinguishable from the Vanderbeek. And I'm sure that young Poles are doing the same thing. It pops up all over through the summer, you know.
The film and painting now. The use of paintings in film, padding across the surface of a painting.
I hate it. This is one of the things that really bothers me. When I look at a painting, I want to look at a painting complete. And I hate a camera crawling over, pointing out details to me. I want to see the total work as the artist did it. I loathe these damned art shorts, as they're called, in which they will spend half an hour sometimes crawling around on the surface of one painting. I want to see it as a man did it, and I don't want this man making the movie to tell me I have to look for 30 seconds at this spot and 20 seconds at another. I want to see it for myself. I think this is a bastard form.
That's what it is used as a kind of didactic form, but suppose it was used for poetic purposes, for poetic stuff.
I think that's even worse most of the time. For instance, the Ellen Renee art shorts, which are very poetic, I've only seen a few of them, and I blister. For instance, when he shows us Picasso's circus figures, and we are told that these are victims of the Spanish War, this is the kind of phony interpretation that gets in everything. There's a new film out now on Kafka, in which the narrator shows us faces and all from Kafka's period and photographs, and then informs us that the trial was a prevision of what was going to happen to the Jews in Nazi Germany. You can use the film for almost anything, and this is what this poetic kind of use of commentary and all tends to lead into all too damned often. Most of the time they misinterpret what the artist was doing. I'd like to have a work of art left alone. I mean, if a man wants to do something about painting, let him paint on the screen.
What is the role of the university film workshops? Is there any hope there?
It would be lovely to say marvelous work is going to come out of them. I don't believe it. Most of them are oriented toward commercial production, and then their graduates can't get into the studios because of the unions. So instead of re-examining the whole premises of what the school is for, they are now orienting their students toward making industrial films. And I don't see why they can't just go to an industry-supported technical school. They do just as well. I mean, if U.S. Steel needs filmmakers, they can train them.
What would you do in a university film department if you were heading it?
First, I'd try to get the students interested in looking at movies. Because the astonishing thing about most of these young filmmakers is they've never seen any pictures. If you ask them what was a great film, they come up with Gone with the Wind, and you want to cut your throat. They've never seen anything before that. The first thing would be to give them a history of film and maybe give it to them a little bit backwards. Show them a Vigo film and then say, but what was he breaking away from? What came before Vigo? And to go back, or to show them a Truffaut film and see what it derives from. To look at a modern spectacle and then show them Gantz's Napoleon and show them how he did the same thing better decades before at a fraction of the cost. Try to give them some sense of not only the history, but the basic aesthetics of seeing what the hell's on the screen.
The master plan of the California Department of Education is to concentrate on certain on some things. Each campus is to have some specialty, and the San Fernando State College has been given the film specialty, and they have poured hundreds of thousands communications department.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
They call it that, or anthropology. They have other names for it. Now, they've poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into equipment, but they still do not have a library. they started buying films, but the amount of money that is set aside for buying films to have a permanent library is like running an English department without a library of books.
I'd say for $5,000, you could put together a brilliant library of films that would just open the eyes of young kids on what movies are about. You get for them Kirsanoff's Manuel Montan. You get Buñuel's Land Without Bread, Chenin de Lou. You get Griffith's Intolerance and Broken Blossoms and Birth of a Nation. A print of a feature film in a 16mm reproduction, you ought to be able to get a feature for $100, a short for $25. You could build up a fabulous library for a few $1,000s, and students don't have this anywhere. Every university I know of has an audiovisual department with thousands of dollars in educational films.
At the University of California in Los Angeles, the theory seems to be, from what I'm able to gather, that as soon as possible you put a camera in the hands of a student and turn him loose. Now, many of those students, as you say, and I've talked with some of them when I was visiting there, have not seen enough films.
No, but also they're not even turned loose; they're turned tight. They're given so many theories and instructions about what the devil's filmmaking is about. They study so many manuals and texts that they are absolutely constricted about what they can do. If they just went out and played around, they might come up with at least a flower thief. Mm-hmm. They don't even come up with that.
Yes.
They labor for a couple of years to get this impeccable, neat little image of nothing. Mm-hmm. But there again, the university...
How would you start? You'd start with showing them films and then talking about what has been accomplished in the past, by whom, and for what reasons, and what has developed out of it. Now, what's the next step?
Well, I think linked with this is talking about current films. I think they should go together. Yeah. Because the students at the same time are seeing current films, and very often they have the strangest idea of what's good. Because they just, for one thing, what's important in art is what's new, what's different. And if you don't know what came before, for instance, a movie like A Taste of Honey seems like a masterpiece.